Hello everyone, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. Welcome to this video and live stream at the same time if you're with me live. Thank you for everyone who's been waiting for me. I wanted to give you very important updates in this video. Now, in the first part, as usual, I'm going to be discussing these updates that I wanted to talk to you about, and then we'll follow up with a Q&A session following the updates. So, the big elephant in the room. A massive brawl breaks out in the Israeli government meeting between the government and IDF officials. Now, I previously spoke about many feuds between the Israeli leadership. Yoav Gallant has massive feuds with Benjamin Netanyahu from a very long time ago. Netanyahu fired him previously when there were protests against him last year, and he had to take him back. During the war, many of these feuds were evident, whether when it comes to them having joint press conferences, whether when it comes to the objectives of the war, or with meetings in general. And it's not just between Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the defense minister. It's between the war cabinet. And it seems like, because people need to understand, Netanyahu has been in power for approximately 16 years altogether now. This is the worst year in his history because he had to rely on the very far right. And obviously, you know the political scene and what we mean by right in Israel, okay? But he had to rely on Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir to hold his government. Now, these people, they traditionally don't like the Israeli army. They swear at them many times, they attack them, they say many bad things about them. And this has been evident throughout this war. But now, they need to discuss how they're gonna get out of the mess from Gaza. And there's a big difference. Netanyahu, who's relying on Ben-Gvir and Smotrich for his coalition, they are dictating things and he has to follow suit because without them, he has no government. And he knows he is unable to bring anyone else instead of them to keep his coalition alive. So they want resettlement in Gaza. These people dream of rebuilding Gush Katif in Gaza, living in Gaza again, settler mentality. I mean, Itamar Ben-Gvir lives in one of the worst Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and they want to replicate everything in Gaza again. But what caused this massive brawl? What caused this massive brawl is the IDF chief, Herzi Halevi, who in many cases was excluded from government meetings, by the way, and didn't want to attend them because of the frictions, not only between him and Netanyahu, but between him and the rest of the cabinet members. And if you recall, I posted a video previously about Netanyahu asking him to be security checked before going into the meeting. Imagine, that's the IDF chief. And these things are not highlighted on mainstream media, but everyone needs to understand them to establish somewhat of what's going to happen in Gaza post the war. So they held a meeting to discuss the day after the war. What caused the massive outrage is the fact that the IDF chief, because all of the military leadership was there, and I spoke about a couple of days ago about how Netanyahu told the head of the strategic department in the IDF, Toledano, he told him off after he answered a question and commented from one extreme right-wing member of parliament. She's a minister, actually, Orit Struk. Herzi Halevi, the IDF chief, he appointed Shaul Mofaz, who was the previous Israeli defense minister, to deal with the day after in Gaza. Now, people need to remember, Shaul Mofaz was in charge of the withdrawal from Gaza in 2005, okay? He led the war with Lebanon as well in 2006. But to them, it's signaling a message. So the guy was already in charge of an Israeli withdrawal, and now he's coming again to take care of the withdrawal again from Gaza. And they were fuming with him. Now, this wasn't meant to leak out, but some people leaked a few things. You had shoutings, brawls, swearing. It was extremely tense, and Netanyahu had to call the meeting off. He called the meeting off, no talk, no decision, no resolution, nothing. Not only that he's facing all of this pressure internationally, and you have the court case, which I'm going to be talking about alongside the Epstein connection to the case shortly. He's facing this increasing pressure internally from the closest people who should be aligned with him when it comes to the war objectives. He's not aligned with them, they're at complete odds, and they are resisting his plans for the day after in Gaza because it's aligned with what the far extreme right-wing mental people want. Now, I also spoke about a couple of days ago how he prevented the head of the Mossad from speaking with the defense minister. But apparently, he also banned the head of the Shabak from speaking with the defense minister, with Yoav Gallant, because he doesn't want him to have any dealings with the war, with the negotiation, with anything. And Netanyahu most likely instructed the Israeli Mossad to carry out these assassinations that happened and terrorist attacks in the last few days. So that's what happened on the front of the government versus the IDF. Extremely tense. They don't know where they're going. So because people internationally everywhere, they want to know where things are going. The government and the IDF don't know where they're going. We're talking about a diabolical situation. Which takes me to the next point. A brief update about today's activities in Gaza in terms of fighting. Israel yesterday had 7 brigades fighting in Gaza. Today they introduced another brigade. So they have another brigade to fight in these small neighborhoods that they cannot control. They've been facing massive resistance from the Palestinian resistance. They constantly invade and then go out. And they are unable to take control of any strategic part in Gaza, whether it's Khan Yunis, Al Burej, the coastline, or even the eastern side of the border. And the accomplishments in comparison to the size is nothing. They have so many troops over there trying to show power, but they're being met with fierce resistance and ever-increasing sophistication from the fighters in Gaza. That's briefly about the military front. We had another report, a leak, that 12,500 IDF soldiers are paralyzed from the war on Gaza. Paralyzed, not injured, paralyzed for life. Now, I spoke about the ratio usually of urban warfare previously. It's typically 3 injured per 1 killed. If you're talking about, thank you very much for anyone contributing, I appreciate that. If you're talking about 12,500 paralyzed, excluding other injured soldiers, what's the number of the actual casualties? And people are saying the number is much higher. What are we talking about? Tens of thousands injured and at least 10,000 killed? Very, very probable. I mean, you have the resistance said they destroyed now approximately over 900, because just over a week ago, they said 872 Israeli vehicles. Now, some of them carry from 4 to 17 people. So now you're probably talking about, what, 1,000 maybe. And these people, when they're attacked, that's apart from the soldiers on the ground. So you're talking about massive numbers. And they weren't supposed to release this information, but it has been leaked to multiple news sources. Obviously, you're seeing constant vile videos from the IDF soldiers, what they're doing in Gaza. I mean, I spoke about the kidnapping of Palestinian babies and their parents not knowing their whereabouts yesterday. And I gave a statement of the gentleman and his family, Rushdie Avava, his name was. And today they're posting videos of them going into a house. The family was cooking there. They force the family out and they start eating their food. Imagine what type of mentality these people have. But what I wanted to say is, and I'm sure many of you saw, you probably didn't see, they don't like, obviously it's hard on Western mainstream media, but Arab news networks and social media is full of these stuff. Them mocking the people, abusing them, running over them, the killing, it's endless, the list goes on. But I just wanted to highlight that because this shows you the mentality of these people. But what I wanted to say here, this is a replication of what happened in 1948. Exactly what happened. They were going into people's houses, forcing them out, coming in instead of them, and taking over their places. They're replicating the same thing. They're calling it the 2023 Nakba, the Gaza Nakba, and they want to implement their dreams of having settlements there again. So people need to understand that. What they're doing now is what they've historically done, and it's not new to them. Which leads me to the last point that I wanted to talk about before I start taking your questions and commenting on what you've said here. The Jeffrey Epstein case. Firstly, a quick background. Jeffrey Epstein is a well-known Israeli secret intelligence person. So is Ghislaine Maxwell. So is her father, Robert Maxwell. The Foreign Office in Britain said that her father was a vile, bad character. Bad character, they said. I'm sorry if I said it wrongly. But something of bad character, they said about him. And they suspected that he was a triple agent at some point. He was famous to pass the Israelis weapons from Czechoslovakia in 1948 to pass the Arabs, against the Arabs, sorry. And his death is very shady. You know, this disappearance in the sea. Like the death of Jeffrey Epstein was very shady. Supposedly in a special place in prison, 2 people guarding him. All of a sudden they disappear. He hung himself, and they highlight that they're showing his body, which is not completely identical with his profile. But anyway, we all know who Jeffrey Epstein was. Now, a comment here before I come to what I wanted to talk about. Jeffrey Epstein is confirmed to have had traps for leading figures in the world, all right? That's the main thing. What about the current Epstein, or Epsteins that we don't know about? That's if he's dead, okay? That's number one. And them blackmailing all of these politicians to keep their mouths shut and not say a word, otherwise they'll publish stuff about them, okay? Which leads me, I just wanted to put these comments on for you to think about them, which leads me to what I wanted to talk about. The ICC is supposed to discuss Israeli genocide that South Africa, the brave South Africa, went ahead with the International Court. And for the first time, they haven't done this before Israel, not as far as I remember, Israel sent someone to defend them. They don't usually do that, which means they will face backlash if they fail. If they ignored it, obviously, you need to understand about the International Court, it's not compulsory, it's not binding. Like the compliance rate is very low. It's 50% with small cases, and it's a lower percentage with big cases. Like Russia didn't comply, arrest warrants, they didn't comply, lots of it. Israel probably won't comply because they have been, excuse me, pissing on international law for all of that time. But the hearing is next week, right? And we're releasing the Epstein list. The United States is releasing them. Why now? Alan Dershowitz. He represented Israel in many cases previously. And he is the person who's supposed to represent them. They authorized him to represent them in the International Court case. He's on the list. Apparently, he went and had forced sexual relations with underage women from Jeffrey Epstein, okay? So imagine the image this gentleman is going to present Israel in the International Court. And in my opinion, and again, I might be wrong here, but I'm just analyzing, This is yet another attempt from the United States to keep tabs on Israel. I know there's dealings, and some of you might say they control the US, but there's a power balance and there's fighting, okay? There's tensions. There's tensions. It's not like everything is a honeymoon here, okay? They gave Israel a deadline. The Israelis are upset with Netanyahu. He clearly said that the Americans are putting pressure. The Minister of Interior Security, National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, said we're not a star on the American flag. It's yet another thing that the United States is using for Israel to comply, again, in my humble opinion. So these were the main things that I wanted to talk about. And I'm just going to go through some of the things you said. And if you have any questions, please start asking, and keep it to one question per one person. And then I will do my best to answer all of them briefly. Thank you very much to anyone who's contributing. Francis Fitzgerald, thank you so much. And all of you, Citizen Zeus, thank you very much. Pamela Deem, thank you very much. And Precious Guinea Pigs. And Medm Boker, thank you very much. And everyone else, thank you very much for your contribution. If you guys have any questions, can you please start them from now? What do you think? Altaf Ismail, what do you think about USA withdrawing its ships from the Mediterranean? I think it was one of those pressure points against Israel, because they stated, the American defense minister and multiple leading US officials, they said that the ships were there to deter Iran and Hezbollah from attacking Israel. Now, Blinken also canceled his visit after they assassinated Al-Aruri in Lebanon, okay? This was a sign from the US. So if, and I spoke about this as well, if your aim of sending this to the warships to the Mediterranean to deter Iran and Hezbollah, well, they haven't left the war. It's still active. Hezbollah is still fighting. As a matter of fact, Israel just did this operation, this assassination, as they were leaving. And again, Israel was fuming. There were reports leaked from Israeli officials. A network spoke with a couple of Israeli officials that they were outraged by the United States, and they asked for a clarification, and they told them that your withdrawal doesn't suit us now. Israeli officials said that to the United States. So I think it was a pressure point against Israel to comply. And they haven't withdrawn from the Red Sea, because the Red Sea includes ships that deal with Israel but are not under direct Israeli control. So some of them are controlled by some of the countries in the coalition. So from their perspective, it's also harming us, because we haven't boycotted Israel and we don't want the Yemenis to dictate what we do in the Red Sea. But obviously the Yemenis, Ansarullah al-Houthiyyin, they haven't, they're still defiant. They're not bowing down. And as a matter of fact, they're attacking these warships. So I hope this clarifies. Let's go to the next question. Next question. What do you think about the supposed multinational force that Israel has been talking about? Apparently Egypt will be taking part. That's from WebTech. Well, again, if Israel itself doesn't know anything about the day after in Gaza, how are we going to conclude what's going to happen and which forces are going to come? Hamas still runs the show, and they're saying we won't accept any international forces, and Gaza won't be ruled by anyone apart from its people, which is how it should be. And Hamas, don't forget, they were an elected government. Again, the West doesn't like saying that, the mainstream media. As a matter of fact, Jimmy Carter, he oversaw those elections, and he said they were the most democratic elections in the history of the Arab world. Remember that very well. So if Israel doesn't know what's gonna come in the day after, how are we to say they're gonna bring international forces? If the Israeli forces, who are the forces who are most full of hate and resentment and corruption against the people in Gaza, are not able to do anything, and if the Israeli army is showing unwillingness to fight in Gaza, and if they're having to withdraw and some of them run away, and if there's unwillingness to go from who's gonna be there? You know what I mean? As peacekeeping or whatever. And the only peacekeeping, if you want to talk about something, if you if you want peacekeeping process again, please, I'm trying to bring a fresh kind of mindset here. People need to think that they like to plant things in your mind, right? Like they planted this terrorism facade. Why should international forces be in Gaza and not in Israel? Who's committing genocide and prove to the world that they're a genocidal death cult? If there should be any international forces keeping the peace, they should be in Israel, keeping the IDF or IOF in check, not the people who were forced out of their homes and fighting for their rights. Do you understand? So I hope this clarifies. Thank you everyone for your comments. Let me go to the next question. Do you think the Fatah group will join Hamas if the war continues? That's from Ummi. There are fractions that were previously parts of Fatah in Gaza that might be contributing. Now, remember, when there was the democratic elections in 2006, Hamas offered Fatah national unity government, but Fatah, because they were aligned with Israel in terms of like security and everything as they are in the West Bank, they wanted to hold key positions that didn't suit their level of representation in the democratic election. So Hamas told them, okay, you can have some positions, but you can't have the core positions. Like usually if a government wins an election, they'll hold like the key positions. So they didn't want that. And obviously then the fights broke between them. Some people who were completely Israeli agents started attacking and trying to cause chaos. And then when things were about to get out of control, Hamas took a decision to deal with it through Al-Qassam brigades, and they shut down any coup attempt, and they controlled Gaza. And then obviously Israel started attacking Gaza in the 2008-2009 war, 2012, 2014, and the other escalations. So in terms of full out, like if you're thinking about the West Bank, for example, I don't think that's going to happen. Although there are security forces from which belong obviously to Fatah, the PLO, who are joining the resistance, like some of their family members, they join fighting against Israel, and Israel knows that, but they don't want to increase the tensions because they know if Fatah in the West Bank, if the PLO completely cut ties with them in terms of security, it will be hell for them. But if you're talking about Gaza, I don't think they're going to have a big contribution, but some groups that were aligned with them previously or people who got away from Fatah are actually supporting Hamas. Any news about the whereabouts about the doctors and the director of Al-Shifa Hospital? That's from Z Aqida. I'm not sure entirely, but I know that Israel abducted many hospital managers because they just didn't want any independent hospital management. Because don't remember, they fabricated a few videos from the hospitals. If you remember that woman who acted as if she was part of the hospital saying, oh, Hamas are not allowing us to do this and that, and they obviously faked the evidence about Al-Shifa Hospital, which is supposedly the headquarters of Hamas is under it. We've had this theory from 15 years ago, and they found Jack All, and they had to plant evidence that even the BBC exposed them for. So imagine that. So I'm not entirely sure about these ones, though. I'm sorry. Pamela Deem, why do you think ISIS took credit? That doesn't make sense unless the US was involved in. Firstly, ISIS is an American-Israeli creation. They were full of intelligence agents, and they were there to cause havoc in the Middle East because, well, it's nicer for, you know, the United States and Israel to have internal division and problems rather than them doing the job. It's an old textbook in terms of war. And don't remember, the guy who maliciously calls himself Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi to refer to the, you know, noble Khalifa Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. It was there also to put, you know, a bad name on Islam, as usual. We've been used to that since the 9/11 false flag. And they've always been agents. So ISIS is a tool. So it's not surprising that they took the. But Israel wants to do that to increase the tension between, like, the Muslim world, right? So they can say, oh no, these are the Iranis, they do this and that. Not that there aren't, you know, differences in opinions or views or whatever. And not like the Muslim world or the Arab world, everything. No, they have many problems. But obviously, Israel knows that when you talk about Palestine, you unite people. You don't just unite Muslims and Arabs, you unite the world because it's a human cause, right? People are seeing the suffering, they're sympathizing. So they want to create divisions as much as possible. So they focus and activate these agents of theirs, whether it's intellectual, whether it's the mainstream media, whether it's groups like ISIS, to divert the attention and tell them, look, focus on them, they're the baddies, and they want to kill you. And don't focus about what we're doing in Gaza, right? A pure genocide, live ethnic cleansing attempt. That's what everyone should be talking about. And you know, you talk about the day after in Gaza, and I spoke about this previously. What you should be talking about is day after of Israel. Israel, as a state, has always established itself on apartheid and racial supremacy. What you should be talking about is dismantling apartheid, having equality in that country where everyone can live peacefully. Supremacists with mental ideas, if they don't like it, like I said, they can go to an island, have their supremacy implemented on themselves, and leave us the hell alone. People want to live and go on with their lives. So I hope this answered your question. Let me go to the next question. Have you heard of the OIC move? Let me see. Sorry, let me see if there's a question before that. Oh, yes, I heard about the international court. It's going to take place next week, and I just spoke about Alan Dershowitz and the fact that he's representing Israel, and he was in the list of Jeffrey Epstein. I repeat, it's 50% of the small cases in the international court are complied with. When you talk about bigger cases, they usually are not complied with. So the percentage of compliance is very low, like you had in the case of Russia and other cases. But the fact that Israel is taking it seriously and sending a team, they know that there's more pressure on them. But it's also gonna show them in a really bad state if they actually fail and then don't comply. Because people are gonna tell them, hold on, you're a genocide state, you committed genocide and you were convicted and you're not complying, you're awful. They've already made themselves untenable and unpopular across the world, so it's not looking good on them. Soul strategy. One question, dear brother, what are the similarities between censorship of criticism of neo-Nazis in the Ukraine military and censorship of IDF in the UK and Western generally? Obviously, for anyone who is semi-awake, you can see that what's happening in Ukraine is not for the benefit of the Ukrainian people. It's not like they love the Ukraine. Obviously, you have the racism of them, you know, accepting refugees from Ukraine and not accepting them from Muslim and Arab and African nations, right? And people having to come on boats to flee poverty and war zones that they inflicted on these countries. You have that argument, but they're acting like they want it for the benefit of the Ukrainian people. All of this is US military hegemony and control, and they want Russia. People need to understand that. Russia is a very big and rich and powerful country, lots of gas, lots of natural resources. They want Russia. Ukraine, some parts of Ukraine, a couple of hundreds of miles from Moscow. So they'll censor everything from Ukraine. They'll censor everything from Israel, and they'll say that Ukraine is like amazing. So it's typical. Yusra Nasser, I haven't heard Nasrallah's speech today, I'm sorry. I spoke about his speech yesterday. Another question. Let me see. What's the next question? What, Omar, what role do the Rothschilds play in Israel? Do they contribute? And is this the reason the US is a blind supporter? Can you make a video about brands supporting Israel? Well, the Rothschilds were the biggest contributing family to the establishment of Israel. It's well known. Like in Israel, you'll have hospitals on their names, roads on their names. They have a special hill in Jerusalem for Jacob the Rothschild, if I'm not mistaken. They were massive contributors to this. It's not a direct, I don't think it's direct link with US being blind. The US treats it as part of its small puppet in the Middle East for strategic purposes. And in terms of the brands, I think, many people probably do a better job than me with the brands, especially with the boycott movements. What I would say is, though, make sure with the brands that you verify that they actually give contributions to apartheid Israel, because many of them list that, like, you had Zara, you had Starbucks previously. But like I said, make sure you know everything with the boycotts. Next question. How do you analyze ISIS claim for the terrorist attack and potential involvement in state or Saudi kingdom and regarding underlying agenda? Yeah, I just spoke about it. Like I said, they're using it because ISIS is agents. And if you rewatch the video, you'll see I had a detailed answer that'll follow all of your points, hopefully clarify. How likely is it Egypt becomes involved if the Gazans are pushed into Sinai? That's from B. Abid. Egypt already said that they won't allow that to happen. And I know they're very diplomatic when it comes to, even though sometimes they cross the levels of diplomacy when it comes to statements. But to them, excuse me, that would be a national security matter. And it might lead to an all-out war because as well, they're preventing Israel from attacking close to the Philadelphia line, which is the border between Rafah, Egyptian, and Gaza and Rafah, between Gaza and Egypt, because to them, that's you can't cross that line. Let's go to the next question. What are your thoughts about Blinken's latest visit to the Middle East, Yusha Abrahams? It's stated by the White House that his visit is primarily to prevent further escalation. So I think that's what he's going to be focusing on. But he's going to find it really tough with the situation in Israel and inside the Israeli war cabinet, inside the Israeli government, because when you're talking with the united front, it's easier for you to try and establish a plan. But when you're talking about a torn government, very torn, it's very difficult. So I'm not sure if it's going to be fruitful. What does the IDF want with Palestinian babies, Beth? It could be so many things. These people are awful. You know them. They could be taking them for organs or, I don't know, child trafficking, all sorts. You're not surprised with anything they do. We've had reports previously of organ harvesting. They stole organs from previous Palestinian prisoners or people who were killed. They have the world's largest skin bank. Many things. And I pray and hope that, these kids go back safe to their parents, because I can just imagine how distressing that is. Mahmoud, what is Egypt and Jordan's response if Palestinians are ethnically cleansed into their countries? Bi'abid, war. Why is Jordan so quiet? because of obviously their the traditional peace alliance with Israel. You know, you're not talking about a country that will go to an all-out war. You know, we all know how bad the general Arab and Muslim response was to this war. HS, this ISIS incident seems suspicious to create Sunni Shia tensions, in my opinion. What do you think? Of course. Now remember, with the Sunni Shia tensions, before the United States and the coalition invaded Iraq and wreaked havoc and killed 1 million people, there was no Sunni Shia talk that much in Iraq. You had Shias in the government, Christians in the government, and it wasn't the same. They ignite these divisions and tensions, divide and conquer. So absolutely. Der Araber, you're thinking of going back. What is your... I'm thinking of going back. What, to Palestine? Wait for it to settle. I mean, in my opinion, obviously. And then the next question. I have heard that Israel is trying to find a country abroad to take Palestinians as a voluntary relocation. Do you know about this? They have been trying Africa and other places. Yes, of course, that's from Shakti. And again, remember, they always try and play with the voluntary relocation. There is no such thing as voluntary relocation. This is an ethnic cleansing attempt. We spoke about this from day one. This wasn't a war against Hamas. This was a pre-planned thing from Israel to ethnically cleanse Gaza. They have this plan from 50 years ago. They didn't want to have the demographics of Gaza. They've always been like a knife on them, right? A threat. So, and they have their ambitions of the greater Israel, the one state, but many people tell me like the one state that they want, and they want a one state of supremacy with Class A and Class B citizens and expelling Arabs and Muslims. And I'm advocating for a one state solution with everyone having equal rights. So there are talks, they're trying to push for it. There have been talks that Tony Blair, the war criminal, trying to take action. Imagine how ironic it is, war criminals walking freely. But I think it will fail. Next question. Giovanni Di Capo, Israel asked for clarification from America. Seriously? Yes, they did. Next question. Mosaic, do you have plan to talk about the Balfour Declaration? It's pretty well known, the Balfour Declaration, you know, declaring the right for a Jewish state. You know, you can read up about it. It's quite well known. They promised the state for them. People who didn't own the country promised it to people who are not natives at the expense of the native people. Eller, no question, but just wanted to say I'm glad I found your channel. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and intelligence in such an articulate way, making sure the masses understand. Love from Canada. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. Alongside all of you, I really appreciate your kind words and support, and I love all of you. The next question. Egypt depends on US maintenance and spare parts for its tanks and planes. If USA cuts off the military aid, Egyptian military breaks down in 1 week, according to Scott Ritter. Is this weakness? Yeah, it could be, because obviously Egypt has a peace treaty with Israel. By the way, it de facto broke by having so many forces in Sinai, because it's supposed to be a demilitarized zone. But they have never become Israel lovers, if that makes sense. But they do rely on the US. But saying that, they've diversified their arsenal and where they buy weapons from. So now they don't buy most of their things from the US. They go to the Russians, the French, and they manufacture stuff as well. So if all hell breaks loose and Egypt has to go to the war, it's not like they're going to do a bad job, if that makes sense, in my opinion. Retro Revival. Mahmoud, I have a question. As a former Catholic, now Muslim, I wonder if interfaith initiatives may help. I always said it's not even about the faith. It's about basic human morals and moral integrity and sound reason. And like we in Palestine, we've lived with Jewish people and Christian people all of the time. Our cemeteries in Palestine, you would have Christians buried next to Muslims. The Shomronim, who are the most ancient actual Jewish tribe in Palestine, who have been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years, they're in the middle of the West Bank and they look like Arabs and they speak Arabic and they speak Hebrew and they have old scriptures of it. It's not about the religion, it's about Zionism as a political tool, an occupying, brutal, genocidal tool, supremacist tool, there to control everyone. And they hit and imprison Jewish people who resisted them. If you go to Me'ah She'arim in Jerusalem, you'll have the Orthodox Jews protesting, having Palestine, and they're beaten. Go check Torah Judaism, for example, or some of the Orthodox movements that are against Israel. Also, secular people who are anti-Zionists, they pay the price. So it's not even about the faith, you know? We have our beliefs. It should be a case of we live in a world where we respect each other's beliefs. Like you're a Catholic, you turned into Islam, alhamdulillah. And you might have Catholic family members, you still speak with them. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's about basic human dignity, basic human values, in my opinion. And no matter how much interfaith dialogues you're going to have, as long as you're not going to deal with the root cause of the problem, the rotten core, nothing will be solved. It's like sugarcoating stuff. If you go to a doctor, he'll deal with your virus, not with your symptom. Like I said previously, Zionism is the virus and Hamas is one of the symptoms, or the antidote, or the immune system, right? Whatever it is. That's the case. You deal with the core problems. Next question. John Klein, I'm ashamed of my country's actions, but I'm also ashamed that I didn't know much about Palestinians until the 7th of October. Nothing to be ashamed of, you know. They've obviously been manipulating for that long. It's good that people are waking up. I mean, unfortunately, it came at an expense of so many lives lost in Gaza, and it's a tragedy. But the masses are waking up. Anyone with basic common sense and decency is waking up. Deep 007, Hamas got IDF to come to Gaza. What's the next plan of Hamas? Keep fighting a civil war for years? Hamas planned their defense. Israel previously said that they didn't only surprise them with the attack on the 7th of October, they surprised them with the defense. Israel is the side that can't tolerate a very long war. So they know that at some point Israel will break and won't be able to tolerate it any longer. I visited Israel in 2007. I left after one day. Sean Hunt. I'm not surprised. Brother, any updates about the Houthis? Yes, they're still attacking ships. Apparently, they launched a couple of cruise missiles on an American warship, and they're defiant to the warnings of the United States and the coalition. Mahmoud, do you think Israel is just Turkey is just talks and would never go against Israel due to economic ties? That's Ghuraba people. Look, Turkey, we've heard more talks than actions. We have, indeed, and they still have economic ties with Israel. They said, excuse me, that they're willing to intervene militarily. We haven't seen that. I mean, they have obviously the diplomatic support for Palestine. You know, they say the resistance is legitimate, things like that. But again, I don't expect too much from Turkey unless you're talking about an all-out war. Do you think the International Court will recognize the Gaza genocide? Leones del Mundo, probably. There is a very high probability. because Israel's very worried for the first time. Thank you for all of your nice comments, by the way. Any more questions? Let me just see, browse down. Congress. Next question. Let me see. Okay, last question. Omar Zaqut, you're very generous for making your book free for everyone to buy, but is there any way to purchase a physical copy for you in order to get the book and contribute to you personally? Thanks in advance. Oh, thank you very much for that. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in spreading the message really more than making profit for the book. And I don't have a hard copy yet. That's why I made it digital. If I do have a printed copy, you will know. I will let you know, because some people are asking for an audiobook, some people are asking for print. But bear in mind, if you go to a desktop and download it, you can download it as a PDF to read in any device. And if you browse it from the mobile, it's very kind of friendly to browse. But saying that, I will obviously let you know if I have a print version. If you want to contribute, you can obviously donate on my website. Everything is you know, I appreciate any support. It would help me obviously with this channel, and to focus more on my work here, bringing you this information and spreading the message. Steve, how much longer can the people still in northern and central Gaza survive? Well, look, I think they've been through the worst part. Now is bad. It's not like it's not. I'm not trying to play it down, by the way. Genocide, awful. If anyone in the West dealt with 1% of what Gazan population deal with, they'd be traumatized for life. But they're resilient people, and they have survived the worst part, and I think they will survive all of this, and they will refuse to leave, because we saw them during the middle of the intense attacks not leaving. Many of them, the majority of them, 800 million remained in the north part of Gaza, and as soon as the temporary ceasefire took place, they started to go back, and some of them were killed on the way. So the people of Gaza are people full of faith, and they're very brave, and they will end up prevailing, inshallah, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aussie Male Tuber, the Israeli courts have heard that Israel knew something was going on with Hamas before the attacks, and that a Hannibal might occur. Do you think the narrative will change? The Israeli, there are two big lawsuits in Israel. One of them is on behalf, private, not like a massive one, because usually you have these big claims, group claims. This is a group but private one that only dealt with Israel's prior knowledge of the attacks and them not preventing it. So it's still not dealing with their actual involvement. That's gonna be far worse. So we're talking about hell later on. But that's all that started, and it came in a coordination with the Supreme Court banning the pass of the prevention of the reasonableness clause that Netanyahu wanted to get rid of and have full control. So it's gonna be very messy, but again, let's end with this war first, obviously. Any organizations to donate to? Mariam Mahalati. Again, like I said, I'm trying to have a donation company with me, but I still haven't received the confirmation. But if everyone wants to donate directly to Gaza, I would always suggest you check your local charities. Make sure you check them very well, that they're legit, that you verify exactly what they do, how it goes, their level of openness and transparency, and support them. And that's it. Yeah, Omar, you can watch it from the beginning. So thank you very much for joining me in this live stream and video. Like I said, you can watch it from the beginning, and it will remain on YouTube. Thank you for everyone who contributed with super thanks, and for the nice comments that you sent me. Much love and respect. And I hope you have a wonderful Friday, wonderful weekend, and I will see you soon in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye.